Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training, here with this week's Mindset Made Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. And this week we're talking about, are sports killing us? And this was a hard one to think about. I've been thinking about it for a couple weeks. It took me forever to put this together. And before I even go into this, let me just state that I don't have the answers. I know none of us really do. But I have a few ideas on how we might be able to help those kids who aren't at that precipice. Those kids that are just overwhelmed or burn out. Stay away from falling that far into that hopelessness. My heart goes out to the parents of the 5 student athletes who have taken their lives over the past couple months. And I can't imagine what those people are going through, those families. To lose a child, what an unbearable thought to even have, and then to go through it, it's just got to be like one of the worst things ever. But I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on TV, but I do spend a lot of time thinking about tools, reading about tools that can help us increase our well-being, which is what where we need to be with our athletes today. We've spent a lot of time thinking about how sport relates to suicide over the past couple months. That's a good thing, because what it's doing is it's making us take a deep look into what we're doing and how it's affecting those we lead. This is not just an athlete sport issue. I've got some stats here, and you can go to ssbperformance.com/blog to look at all this. I've got a couple of links in there to an article from the Chronicle of Higher Education and a few other things. But over the past 10 years, schools have just reeled to keep up with the demands necessary for well-being and mental health of students on campus in general. In fact, a recent survey of college presidents said that there's been a 30% increase in demand for counseling services on campuses. Secondly, a Gallup poll, and let me find it here, stated that 1/3 of all four-year college students surveyed considered leaving college over the past 6 months. And 75% of that group, of that 33%, said that the major consideration for leaving was emotional stress. Another recent survey shared that 30% of athletes surveyed reported feeling seriously overwhelmed, and 25% of those felt that they were, or 25% otherwise, said that they were mentally exhausted. Mentally exhausted. And I see it. I see it with the athletes with whom I work. I'm sure you see it as well. And just so we can see where we were about 10 years ago, according to a survey by Rayo et al., those of you that do research love to write that in there, 2015, right? Suicide represented 7.3% of all deaths among student athletes in the NCAA over a 9-year period. So think about that, 7.3% of all the athletes that passed away in the NCAA during that time decided to take their own lives. Why? Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't. But what my thought is that we've got to get to those athletes, to those kids, to the people with whom we deal before they get to that point. 50% of all people who take their lives are not diagnosed with a mental issue or a mental illness. But even before the pandemic, this is really scary. Suicide rates for young people ages 10 to 24 increased by 60% between 2007 and 2018. And as I mentioned, half of those were not diagnosed with a mental illness. So this is an issue for all of us, not just those of us who have family members who may have a mental health issue, but for all of us. We are feeling pressure. A lot of us are feeling burned out, and our athletes are no exception to that. In fact, I just recently spent some time with a couple of the groups with whom I work, and here are a couple of the things that they said. I said, what stresses you out about your sport? And here are some samplings of their answers. I'm at my sport so much that I miss so much stuff my friends don't understand and they get mad at me. I'm afraid my college coach will change his mind as he watches me make mistakes, and he may be disappointed that I'm committed there. We drive 2 hours to and from practice 3 days a week, and I have a hard time studying in the car, so I get stressed out about my schoolwork. I stay up late to do homework because I've got a sport commitment every night. On my only day off from practice, travel, or games, I get up before school at 5 a.m. and go to the gym so I can get in better shape. I sleep less than 5 hours a night, typically. I'm worried that I won't get committed. All my teammates have verbal and I haven't. I have to play perfectly. I have to show my skills perfectly every single time I play. And then finally, the last example is my dad thinks I need to practice every day. I want to get better, but I like at least one day off a week. Oh, wow. Think about that. We've got kids. They're worried about their friends. They're worried whether they're going to get committed. They're worried about keeping their parents, making their parents proud. No, that's one that I missed. I'm worried I want to make my parents proud. I have so much. They've done so much for me that I want to do well for them. We have our kids totally stressed out, totally overcommitted, totally exhausted. Think about that. They're worried about their friends getting mad because they're at practice all the time. Now, maybe that's just a teenager thinking, and maybe this is just the younger kids. But these are real issues to these athletes, and we have to take them seriously. So what do? I've got a couple suggestions. Now, again, these are not going to take the person who's at the end of the rope and pull them back. It's not going to happen, I don't think. But if we can cut to the chase before we get there and teach people tools to help lower the pressure or keep the pressure in perspective, teach ourselves those tools before we get burned out. I never even realized I was burned out in coaching. It affected my effectiveness. I wasn't as good of a coach, but I didn't realize it until I took time, stepped back, and looked and said, wow, I had no idea. But here's a couple things, and some of these won't be popular. Number one, we've got to find time to chill. We have 168 hours in a week, and we've got to spend at least 8 hours a day of that sleeping. Sleep is imperative for young people. And you can go and read all about sleep and sleep spindles and how we learn best, but sleep is imperative. We've got to make sure that we are prioritizing that. That is huge. We also have to find in that 168 hours a place to study that actually promotes learning, where our kids can do homework and not in a car. So these things are priorities because if we don't do either one of these, they are stressed out. Stressed out. Number two, before getting out of bed, drink a glass of water. Why? Our brain is 73% water. And if we are 2% dehydrated, it affects our performance by 10%. It affects memory loss. It affects our ability to cognitively retain information. It affects our ability to focus. It affects the way our brain works. And when our brain works better, we function better, we feel better, we see things in a better light. It's good for us. We are chronically dehydrated as human beings. And drinking a glass of water and getting more oxygen and blood flow to our brain first thing in the morning can make a difference. In fact, Dr. Caroline Edwards did a study, and she said that the people who drank water before taking a cognitive test increased their reaction time by 14%. Why? Their blood flow increased. Their oxygen increased. Their body functioned better, and that's one thing that can make a difference in how we feel, and how we feel matters. Number three, back to the 168 hours. Some people won't like this. Take a day off, at least. Our kids need to go outside and play. I posted something on Facebook the other day that all the kids in the neighborhood were in our backyard. It was awesome. First graders all the way to seventh graders were in our backyard playing, making up rules, doing all kinds of stuff. We've got to go out and we've got to call our own fouls. We've got to set our own boundaries. We've got to make the rules and play, or just run and be free. Learning how to tell the guy that just fouled the crap out of you that was a foul, and then finding an amicable resolution to that is a lesson that will serve our kids forever. It builds confidence. It builds relationships. And when we're more confident, we have more hope. And hope is everything. Take a break. Go and play. Every college coach that I read on Facebook talks about how our kids play too much. They're too overscheduled with lessons and all these other things. A break is a good thing. A break is a good thing. And lastly, learn to breathe. With us at all times, we have the best regulator of stress on board, our breath. whether it's a morning routine, an evening routine where we lay or sit and do a breathing exercise, whether it's part of our pre-performance routine where we just increase our blood flow for that moment, clear our minds, get present, or whether it's a situation where right when that stress comes on, we know how to use our breath at that time. Any of these practices make a huge difference in how we see, how we think, how we react, how we perceive. Lowers our heart rate, lowers our cortisol, lowers our blood pressure, and all these things are good and help us manage pressure. So I know these things aren't going to change the world, but if we can learn these little tools, we'll be better at managing the rat race, the race to the top. One of the articles in the Chronicle of Education said that part of the problem in college sports, they think, is that this race to the top where everything is revenue driven causes mental health to take a back seat when push comes to shove, because the coaches are under pressure, the athletes are under pressure, the athletic directors are under pressure, everybody's under pressure. If we can step back and manage moments, we'll be a little better off. But before I go today, I want to bring up a point that was shared with me by one of my true friends, someone I love deeply, that she said to me, maybe the sport isn't the problem. Maybe the sport is what keeps kids hanging on. Maybe the sport is what keeps them focused, keeps them connected, helps them find their worth, helps them find that they can be successful, and ties them to people who help change their lives. Maybe it's not the sport. Maybe it's how we're managing the sport. So it's our job as leaders to equip those we lead and those we love with tools that will help them balance and keep sport in its place. Perspective is everything. We have to manage moments and build momentum in a way that is helping us feel worthwhile and fulfilled and improves our well-being. If you'd like to read more about this, go back to tip 25 and tip number 69, I think it is. Both of them talk about handling pressure. If you'd like to discuss this at length, please email me at juliej@SSP Performance. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of those you lead, enjoy your sport, but take a break and manage moments. Have a great week.